You're listening to sermons from La Cañada Congregational Church and Pastor Kyle Sears. Join us in person every Sunday at 10 a.m. in La Cañada for worship. You can find more information about our church online at lacañadachurch.org.
You know, family is one of those things that is always important to us. And if you have someone who says, I'm a family man, I support family values, family is my number one priority, well, that means you're a good and decent human being. The problem often comes with how we come to understand family. What do we mean when we say family? How is that understanding of family lived out and expressed? Lilo and Stitch is a movie all about family that features a social worker from Child Protective Services. It's a family movie about what it means to be a family and how long we're going to endure disruptions to our traditional definitions of what family means. I mean, is family only blood relatives? Adoption complicates that understanding. Is family only the people who live in our home? Should we extend family to close proximity? You know, the uncles and friends who live nearby, or maybe it's just relational health of those we still are willing to talk to on the phone and see at Thanksgiving. Throw in some complications to how some want to narrowly define family as husband, wife, biological kids, and you begin to sense that there's a threat that comes when we challenge the norms of what family means. And so you can imagine there's probably some confusion also when Jesus shares a surprising definition of what he considers to be a family. This is in Matthew chapter 12, verse 46 through 50. While Jesus was still speaking to the crowds, his mother and his brothers were standing outside wanting to speak to him. And so someone told him, hey, look, your mother and your brothers are standing outside. They want to speak to you. But to the one who had told him this, Jesus replied, well, who is my mother? Who are my brothers? And pointing to his disciples, he said, here are my mothers and my brothers, for whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. Now, when we first meet Lilo, we understand that she is different from the word go. Her loneliness comes through her coping skills with weird dolls and stories that accompany them. She's running late and trying to be as self-reliant as possible. This little girl that we discover is being raised by her sister, and that Child Protective Services have them on their radar. And we realize that this is going to be a different sort of Disney movie where, yeah, the parents are gone, but it's not some deer playing in the forest. These are human beings who are grappling with what it means to be a broken family. Add to that, the other half of this titular duo is basically a terrorist weapon, complete with a Russian-sounding alien creator, and you've got a weird movie, and it's one of my favorites. The kids watched it so much when they were little. I had practically the whole thing memorized. But over the course of the film, what we find is that aliens and humans come together and redefine the idea of family. That Ohana means family. And for Nani and Lilo, family means that no one gets left behind or forgotten. And as children who are left behind, who are forgotten, and who are struggling on their own, Lilo and Nani and Stitch need each other. You know, the idea that family somehow is in our DNA, that by tracing our roots, we reveal something about who we are and who we might be, that's a pretty compelling story. Right? You've probably seen the TV show where celebrities dig into their history to find out more about who they are and connect with these deep DNA roots. Family, we often think, is in our blood. And so expanding our concept of family can feel threatening to this sense of legacy that we've had, or maybe at least confusing to those who want to trace genealogies and find that there's at some point an addition to that story that doesn't quite make sense that 23andMe can at least reveal. In fact, two of our gospel narratives begin by tracing Jesus' ancestry as a way of unlocking what it means to be the Messiah. That's where we get all these so-and-so begot so-and-so who had so-and-so and blah, blah, blah. We find all of that because not only did it inform us on how Jesus may have seen himself, but it also helped Jesus to understand himself. And so maybe it's worth asking the question, how important was family to Jesus? There's no record he ever married or had kids. We have no record of his father Joseph after Jesus is about 12. Is he dead? Did he leave? We're not sure. And while we may have said, so-and-so is like a brother to me, so-and-so is like a sister to me, there's something quite different to say, who really is my family when your family is within earshot, which is what Jesus does. In Hawaiian culture, Ohana extends family beyond bloodline and into those that we choose to be family with, those who have chosen to be our family. This broad definition that makes room for those who might need family the most. I needed a father figure growing up. My dad abruptly left one day after I came home from a friend's birthday party. We found our living room gone with all the furniture. And after a few months of visits every other weekend that the court allowed, he simply disappeared and moved away. States beyond us, and we didn't really know where he went. The next time I would see him was when he was in jail for not providing child support and decided to set foot in Texas. My family was my mom and my brothers, and my grandma and grandpa who lived up the hill from our trailer house. They would often be the ones who would help us make ends meet when things got tight. And what we learned very quickly on was that there was no one else we could rely on. That this broken family we had was crucial for our survival because everyone else seemed to leave when we needed them the most. And then the church went and messed all that up. I got invited to church by a friend of mine when I was in middle school, and the next thing you know, there were anonymous people who chose to be generous to us, who paid for a ski trip that the youth group was going on and that we, my twin brother and I, could not afford. And acts like that, being adopted by all of the grandmas in the church who remembered my name and knew when we weren't there. This understanding of family began to change, defining it not by exclusion, but by inclusion. In fact, in that very fundamentalist church in East Texas, familial language was normal. Pastors were often called brother so-and-so. So Brother Glenn was my mentor growing up. Sister so-and-so is his wife. And while I've moved on from a lot of the theology that I learned in that church, one thing that I cannot escape is the idea that church is a family that is always making room for others, always helping out and checking in and sacrificing for one another to make sure that no one is left behind or forgotten. In a move that surprised everyone in my home, I chose to be a pastor because I hoped to create space for others in the same way that I was welcomed and loved. And so I don't believe Jesus is cutting his mother and his siblings out of his life, but simply expanding the definition of who was family. Not those who were connected by blood or by name or even proximity, but those who were connected with God as Father, as this sense of the one who would draw us together and who would connect to us because we are created by one being who has put a fingerprint of creation into all of us. In fact, as Jesus is dying, he will tell one of his young followers, John, "Behold your mother," as he indicates his mother, Mary, making sure that Mary had someone to care for her. Not someone related by blood, but someone related by a common faith and commitment to one another. Our earliest Christian writer, Paul, will speak how we have all been adopted like sons and daughters by God, that we have within us a spirit that cries out in recognition of our family connection, that we know deep within us that far beyond just blood and surnames, we belong to this common humanity that is loved by God. What I love about Lilo and Stitch is that moment early on when they get home and they just yell at each other. Because that's the family I grew up with. We're all loud to begin with, and then we move out to California, and that volume feels worse, around here. But this is a family that yell at each other and forget their commitments, and they laugh and they play and they cry and they fight and they love one another as families do. They are hurt and are healed by one another. Families are these laboratories, these places where we can practice apologizing and forgiveness and get really bad at it as we get better at it, where we help out without compensation, where we create meaning and we act silly and we drop our guard and do funny voices for our pets that we would never do in public. But it's a way for us to express who we really are. Now, not all families function like that, but I think that Jesus' public wondering of who is my family makes space for those of us who need ways to be who we really are. And if we don't have that within our homes, we can have that in our churches. In the best possible way we could imagine, churches could be the place where we often may find love that we would not have found any other place. Where we can be a poor kid from a broken home. Where we can be a people who learn how to name the tensions that we have with one another, the disagreements that we may hold without ceasing to love them. Where we can be people who have found ourselves adopted by parents and grandparents who know us, who ask us how life is going. Any family systems therapist will tell you that family dynamics are complicated, you know? You add a new child to the mix and things get messed up. You throw a puppy into it and hold on. Each person brings their unique presence that can help and harm the function of the whole. And so you have to navigate those new additions. You throw a chaotic alien into the mix and you get a mess, at least for a while. And each of us within the church has similar capabilities. You know, some churches turn inward because they are way more interested in maybe keeping up the appearances of what a family should be, that they fail to act how a family is. They forget that we are called to love the less than perfect, which is all of us. When I meet with people who want to become part of our congregation, I emphasize that their presence into this family is going to end up shaping the whole family, just as much as I hope our congregation will begin to shape them. Again, their interests and needs. I mean, it's no weird thing that we're showing movies in the park as soon as I become a member of this church because, hey, that's what I like. And playing Dungeons and Dragons and board games and all these, you know, science fiction references that some of y'all can't get enough of. It's an invitation where we make this family more like the family we long for. And so I hope that when you watch movies like Lilo and Stitch, or maybe when you come to become part of a congregation like this, you appreciate the messiness that families bring, the imperfections that families bring, because it means that we are simply extending our boundaries more and more to those who are not all put together and who don't understand, you know, that like Lilo and Stitch, that sometimes you act like a little terror sometimes, that all those disruptions are what make our life important. And that we decide, because God has stuck with us through thick and through thin, through ups and downs, through the times where we rebel and stop believing, to the times that we cling so deeply we can't let go, that because God's love sticks with us, that we can't help but stick with each other. That we become the people that we need when we need them the most. To me, a church is a family, a way for us to care for one another and to be cared for when we need it. And so I hope that we might discover the joy and the surprise, the laughter that comes when we're part of, you know, a little messed up family. Amen.